Good evening, I'm Jeff Glore. Nancy Reagan is being remembered tonight as a First Lady who redefined the role. President Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama offered that assessment, joining past presidents and world leaders paying tribute to Mrs. Reagan today. Nancy Reagan died from heart failure this morning at her home in Los Angeles. She was 94 years old. Mrs. Reagan will be laid to rest beside her husband of 52 years at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library in Simi Valley, California. We begin with Bill Plante, who covered the Reagan White House.
The First Lady of the United States, Nancy Davis Reagan.
It was a role that fit her like a glove, wife and partner to the leader of the free world. And it was a long way from where she started. Anne Frances Robbins was born in New York City. They called her Nancy, and when she was adopted by her stepfather, a prominent neurosurgeon, she took his name and became Nancy Davis.
Well, do you always have to keep your promises?
Hollywood called, and she became a supporting actress in a number of films, including The Next Voice You Hear with James Whitmore. Davis was introduced to the head of the Screen Actors Guild. His name was Ronald Reagan. She would later say, being his wife was the role I wanted most.
I was afraid you wouldn't come.
Hellcats of the Navy was the only movie they made together. But as his trajectory took him away from Hollywood, she was in the front seat with him. Many said she was more ambitious than he was. When they won the White House, the country was amazed by the gaze, the adoring look of a woman who said her main job in life was protecting him. But sometimes she couldn't. There was the assassination attempt in 1981. How you feeling? And his bouts with cancer. Nancy Reagan had her critics. She was attacked for ordering $200,000 White House china during a recession. The president defended her.
There has been no new china for the White House since the Truman administration.
There was perhaps no greater example of how close the Reagans were than when the president was asked a question and the First Lady fed him an answer.
Doing everything we can.
Doing everything we can.
Thank you, sir.
And hello to all of you who are listening.
Nancy Reagan used her influence as First Lady to set up a campaign to try to keep kids from taking drugs.
I can't hear you. Louder. That's wonderful.
5 years after the Reagans left the White House, the former president announced that he was battling Alzheimer's disease. Mrs. Reagan spoke about it in an interview with Mike Wallace on 60 Minutes in 2002.
That's the worst part about this disease. There's nobody to exchange memories with.
So as Ronald Reagan faded from public view, his best supporting actress moved to center stage. She went to his birthday party, alone.
And I'd like to propose a toast to my fella.
She signed his books for him, christened ships named for him, and received medals awarded to him. There were tributes today from across the political spectrum. Her strength of character was legendary, said President Clinton and Secretary Clinton. She leaves a remarkable legacy of good. Her influence on the White House was complete and lasting, wrote President and Mrs. George W. Bush. From President Jimmy Carter, theirs was one of our nation's great love stories and a model of shared devotion to our country. Sending condolences on behalf of herself and President George H.W. Bush, Barbara Bush said, "We take comfort that they will be reunited once more." And in a tweet from her stepson, Michael Reagan, she is once again with the man she loved. God bless. Until his death and beyond, she kept the flame. And in the end, burnishing and maintaining Ronald Reagan's legacy is her own.
Nancy, thank you for your love, and thank you for just being you.
She really was the power behind the throne. Nancy Reagan spent her life protecting her husband. She did all the worrying so he didn't have to. And it was her instinct about people which in most cases decided who would work for Ronald Reagan or whose usefulness had expired. Jeff?
Bill, it's one thing watching the White House, another covering it. You also had several memorable encounters with Nancy Reagan, did you not?
Yeah, several, but the big one was at a reception when I introduced my date to her as my almost fiancé. She gave me a withering stare, and she said, "Get her a ring." I did.
Bill Plante in our Washington Bureau. Bill, thank you very much tonight.